So now that we had a look at functions inside of functions, which is quite interesting, let me come back to that add event listener thing. There, I'm passing a function as an argument, an anonymous function which I create here in place as I explained. Now, I already mentioned it at the beginning of this module. What we're effectively doing here, therefore, is we're passing a pointer at a function to another function. So this function here is effectively a parameter or a value for a parameter of the add event listener function. And that's a pattern you will see in JavaScript a lot. You can also build it your own for your own functions, but especially built-in functions will often have this behavior where you need to provide them with a function. Typically, all built-in functions that do something which is event-based or which takes a bit longer. Because this is a pattern called a callback function. In the end, what you're doing here is you're creating a function, either in place with this anonymous function, or you stored it in a constant before, it doesn't matter. And you're just passing a pointer at the function to add event listener. That's what you already learned. Now, you never call the function yourself, right? The browser, so the thing behind add event listener in the end, calls it for you when that click event in this case occurs. Now, this is called a callback function, therefore, because it's called for you by something else. You can't control when exactly it's called. It's just coming back at you. It's called for you at some point in the future. And therefore, this, for example, for events is the core pattern because you can't execute the function on your own. You don't know when the click occurs. You just want to give the browser the function or a pointer at a function to execute for you. That's why in this case, you pass a function as a value for an argument to another function because the browser needs that function to do its job. Hope that makes sense. Now you can also build your own function that takes a function as an argument. Let's say the SumUp function here should actually not return the sum here, but instead it should execute a function which we pass to it, which then gets the sum as an argument. So I'll replace a and b here with a new parameter, and you can name it however you want. You'll often see names like cb for callback, but you can name it however you want. So I'll name it result handler to make it really clear that this is kind of a function which will do something with the result of this calculation. So here, once we're done, instead of returning, I'll use this result handler parameter. And since it will be a function or a pointer at a function, I can execute it as a function by adding parentheses, right? Hope that makes sense. It will be a function, so I can execute it as such. Now we'll pass sum to that function. It's now our job to make sure that when we call SumUp, we do provide this function. So for this, I'll actually create yet another new function here, show result, or however you want to call it, with any of the three ways of building a function you want. Again, that does not matter here. Whoops, I'm missing a semicolon here, by the way, now that I saw it. So show result like this. And there I want to use the alert function to show the result. The result after adding all numbers is, and then simply show the sum here, or the result. So I expect to get the result here in this show result function as an argument, and therefore I can use it here. And I can expect that I get it as an argument here, because this will be the function which I pass to SumUp in the end as a first argument, and therefore that will be what is used as a result handler, that will be called, and an argument will be passed to it. So sum, which is passed to result handler here, will in the end be the argument I receive here in show result, because show result is now what I pass to SumUp as a first argument. Of course, without parentheses, just as we did it for add event listener, because I don't want to execute it here, I want to give SumUp the chance of executing it for me. So I pass show result here to both SumUp and to the other SumUp call, not to subtract up, because there we don't support this yet, but pass it to SumUp like this as a first argument. Therefore, in SumUp, this is received here on this result handler parameter. So this is now a pointer at a function, therefore we execute it here, and we pass sum to it, and since the function that will be executed is this function, sum will in the end be the value for a result here, and will show up in our alert. That's the theory at least. Let's give this a try, and let's reload this page, and indeed I get an alert with 19 and 142. And I get undefined here because I still console log the result. Now, since SumUp doesn't return anything anymore, this won't work. So we should get rid of that. And instead take advantage of our showResult function, which we now pass. So this is a callback function and how we can build it on our own. Now, again, this is how you can build it on your own. Often, or in a lot of cases, you won't need to build it on your own. Because of course here, there's nothing wrong with just returning the sum here and then using it in the place where you called SumUp. But throughout your career as a web developer, as a JavaScript developer, you will also encounter cases where you want to write functions which actually take such a callback function and then do something with it. And a lot of the built-in functions in JavaScript support this pattern, especially all the event listeners and so on. So everything that's related to actions which occur in an unpredictable way or which take very long. And therefore here it's nice to know what's happening behind the scenes when you use these internal functions like addEventListener, right? Because that's exactly the pattern we use there. There I'm passing in an anonymous function, but as you learned, that's essentially the same as pointing at a named function like this.